Hey guys, Ramsey here with the Rajathon YouTube channel, and I am really excited to bring to you guys the review for Metro 2033. What I'd love to do is show you guys video game footage, and I'm really excited to do that because I really enjoyed this game. So I'll show you the intro that the game does, and it's a really good intro to the book itself. So if you wanted to read the book or if you just wanted to go and play the game, generally the game's about $5 or $6 on most platforms if you have a PC. And ton of fun. I would recommend it to most people. It's hard. If you don't like hard games, I would definitely like hard first person shooter is what you're getting here. But it is a ton of fun. So here's the intro to that.
I was born in Moscow, but I remember nothing of that time. I was just an infant when the old world was destroyed in the flames of nuclear fire. I, along with 40,000 others, were saved by retreating to the metro stations deep under the city. Now, 20 years have passed, and going up into the embrace of an endless winter was left to a few brave souls. The metro was our home, and our fortress against the nightmarish mutants who roamed the tunnels. Still, we never gave up hope that we would return to the surface. But one day, a new threat appeared, and we found ourselves in a war to determine the very existence of our species.
And now I'm going to mute the game footage and show you guys. I really enjoyed the voice narration of Artyom and the other characters. I thought they did a great job on telling us more about the world, especially through the way the video game was done. The game is actually Metro 2033 put together with Roadside Picnic, which are two dystopian nuclear end-of-the-world Russian books. And they thought that Metro 2033 was not as action heavy, which it isn't, and they wanted to add Roadside Picnic for the Nosalises, which are kind of like a mutated dog rat giant creature, and you see a ton of those in the book that we have. So really excited to go over some great points. I'm going to do mostly spoiler free. There may be a couple things that some people consider spoilers. I personally don't, but I'm a little bit more loose on that topic than most people. So going through, things I really want to hit on is Artyom and why I love him. Artyom is the character that we follow his perspective the whole way through. We are really learning about the world through Artyom's eyes. He travels all the way through the metro from his starting home point to the Hansa to get help because the Dark Ones are going to destroy his home. And that's not a spoiler. It's immediately what we go through as soon as we jump into the book. He is coming up. He's 17 years old. He's learning about the metro kind of as we are. He has the backstory, but he kind of describes it to us a little bit, like who the different factions of the metro are, how we got here. You learn his life story really early on. I won't spoil that. It's a neat way that he was not originally from the station he lives at, and the reason that he lives with his stepfather, and their relationship becomes really, really important. And I'm excited for people to... I grew up as a stepson, and my stepdad was a way better father than my father. And so knowing that Artyom gains a stepfather who wasn't related to him, and how their relationship is, and how his stepfather cares for him, and you kind of even get that other perspective from his stepfather on what he wants for Artyom in his life and what the dreams he has for his stepson, and how he wishes that he was more of a father to Artyom. It's always a topic that makes me feel great. when I hear that topic. You know, I talk to my mom and my stepdad separated, and I talk to my stepdad all the time. He's still my dad because of the relationship that we formed when I was a young man. So that's a beautiful thing about it. And then I just love the way that Artyom travels through the world and he questions things. He meets all these different factions and different groups of people, and he goes into it with a young man's perspective. So he's a little more gullible, a little more naive, but still you don't get the feeling that he's just that kid that you can get over on. And maybe that's the hardened nature of what they had to be in the metro, but it's really really cool to see his journey. And I love a good journey story. A lot of people don't like the traveling trope. They're more like school stories and things like that. I love going on an adventure with somebody. Maybe it's my love of travel where I just like to go places. The happiest I'll ever be is just going and seeing new things, right? So, I wanted to go over some of the factions. We learn about them very, very early on, and then we end up meeting them later on. So, we have the Hansa, which is in the ring, which, if I can show you a map here, I will. And in that ring, you have basically like a central government. This is where most of the leaders went, and they set up a government for themselves. And then you have the Nazis, which were formed kind of like the pure blood, pure Russians only. And then you have the redo of the Communist Party, which they call themselves the Reds, and they fought with the Hansa for years and years and years. And that was a big, bloody, nasty battle where everybody in the metro kind of tried to pick a side. There's still some independent stations where Artyom comes from an independent station. He comes from Pulichnaya, and really excited to. I listened to the audiobook. So, being that I listened to the audiobook, I got a better perspective on the Russian names of the stations. And some of the station names changed. So, you'll see, like, the station map at the beginning, where all of a sudden, you know, all these stations were like modern day Russia. And then they've reverted back to the names that they had during communist times for the Red Party. And so they wanted certain stations, and those stations meant a lot to them, mostly around the Kremlin and the great library that they have. And because those communists made a treaty with the Hansa and quit fighting, they also have the Che Guevara communists, who are the still fighters, which is really funny. They model themselves after the communists in Cuba. It was the way they described it. It made sense at the time. It was different for sure. And then you have the Cult of the Great Worm, which is I'm not going to say much more about them, but when you meet them, they are a huge part of the story. We know about them; they're kind of mysterious and mystical. And then in the Hansa, you actually have the Brahmin and the military leaders. It's like two different separate factions. The Brahmin are the learned men from the library, and the military leaders are all the government military that came down. Basically, those stations are directly below where all those people used to be. So they came down and they just restarted the government. It's like a twofold government where the learned men and the military men kind of work in tandem, but they also don't work together. And then there's a couple different religious factions, which some Christians, some Buddhists, I think. There's actually one religious faction where they're just trying to dig a hole down to hell. They're like, we're already halfway there. Let's just get all the way there. And that was really crazy to see. We do get quite a few info dumps all the way through where you learn a bit more about who everybody is and what the governments are doing and the factions. It kind of comes out all at once. Most of them are generally people that Artyom meet as he's traveling, and then through that, he is getting a bunch of information about a different part of the metro. Really, stuff he kind of knew a little bit about, somebody goes into depth about and kind of tells him. Each station is generally like a pod, if you imagine that, and they're connected through the subway tunnels, and they're their own little worlds, own little cities, like some of them don't even know the others exist. So as Artyom's traveling through the tunnels and getting in these stations, it's small pods of people, or sometimes with the very big stations, big pods of people, where all of a sudden they just have their own government and world and set up. And it's really, really neat to see this fractured city-state kind of idea that formed in the metro. And it's really, really cool. And I think it's one of the neatest settings that you could have in a book. So we also meet a man named Khan as we travel through very early on, and he's kind of like our mystical wizard type guy. He doesn't do any magic, but he has like this weird sixth sense about him that is really interesting. And Artyom doesn't know if he's good or bad, if he should follow him, or what he should do with him. Uh, it's a strange scenario. I hope in the later books we meet Khan some more, because Khan is one of those characters where you just you don't know, and you don't need to know, but you want to know. It's that really crazy, interesting scenario there that is really fun in a book where you meet somebody who's crazy mysterious, and he kind of gives you a little bit of the world and the mysticism, but it's not well flushed out because it didn't need to be. And then if you remember Rasputin in Anastasia, if you ever watched that movie when you were younger, they do a kind of idea where the Kremlin was very mystical, and where the early Russian Revolution leaders were looking for all the mystical things that they could do. And that's, I think, part of the reason why we get such a mystical idea in the tunnels, where the tunnels kind of take on their own life, where, we see throughout the story, we see ghosts, we see a bunch of crazy things like that. And I think it's because of the mystical idea that they had, where it was inferred that all the mystical parts. I don't want to go too deep into it. I don't want to explain it to you, because it's really fun to get that explanation with Artyom, where you learn so much more about the mystical elements of it. So one of the coolest things I want to talk about is the scary imagery that the book has. It's more of a looming scariness over your shoulder than the jump scares that you'll see in a movie. And I think the game went a little bit more on the jump scares with the big Nasalises jumping out at you. But the book had this just weight, where Artyom felt the weight of the tunnels on his back as he was just going through. And then there was a time where he was up on the surface, where he actually met some of the mutated creatures that we talked about, and he mentions headless mutants a bunch in the story. If you took this and made this into a scary movie, it would be one of the coolest scary movies if you kept it the way the book does it, where it's just you feel the fear. Every now and then you see a monster or a creature, and then through that you just saw the horror of these mutated creatures. And I, as a new reader into horror, where I'm jumping into it, reading a couple books, some Stephen King. There's even an author that I'd love to try named Ramsey Campbell, who shares my same name. I think this would be an amazing scary movie if they did it in that ominous, not jump scare kind of way. And I would love to see that if they ever did it. I would recommend this book to anybody who enjoys a good coming of age story. Artyom 17, and he's really just taking a journey to learn more about the world. He approaches it in a way where he's a young man, but he's not very naive. Maybe that is just from coming up in the metro system, where everybody wants something from you, everybody's trying to get something from you. So he's not a naive character. But being a young man, he's not worldly yet, and he doesn't know a ton about what's going on in the world and in the metro system. And he learns a lot about it, which is so much fun to join him on that journey. One of the cool things that I would say about this is it is a journey story, and I love a good journey story. And I need you guys to understand the way that he takes the most roundabout, serendipitous route that you can take, because of the factions that are in the metro and making his life difficult. Normally, it would have taken him 45 minutes if it was today in the metro. And it takes him, I think, 2 weeks to get where he wants to go in the metro. I'd also recommend this to anybody who loves a good dystopian horror type book. It has that great feeling. It has that wonderful sense of this is about to get bad. I think you always assume when the main character is from that first person perspective that you're gonna have that character make it all the way to the end. And so, but you never know who else is going to die, what's going to happen, what's going on. And if that's a spoiler, I am sorry about that, but you kind of do get that sense that like your main character is generally going to make it through the entirety of the book. But the scenarios he's put in, what will happen to him? What will his life be like after? Will he be maimed? Will he be distorted? Will he be emotionally scarred for the rest of his life? And the book takes you down those paths. It really, really does. So as I want to end, I want to say There's an invitation to the Discord channel down below. I do book updates. I'd love to hear your book updates. I have a couple people in there that we talk pretty regularly, and it's a fun time, especially when we're reading something, or we've read the same book and we can take that journey together. That's just a blast. I really enjoy doing it. Also, I do have a Twitter. Use it mostly just for the channel and promoting and things like that. And I try to stay active on it. I'm not a big fan of social media. I understand that the way the world is now, that's a lot of people are, and it's just not really my thing. So I will try my best to stay active on Twitter. Don't really use Instagram or Facebook. I'm sorry about that. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, I'd love that. It would be such an amazing thing to have more people join me on this journey. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.